This video is to help you with number 7 on CR Helper number 24. On the CR Helper, it looks like a long problem, but I think if we break it down part by part, it should work out okay. It says local health officials reported that the ratio of adults who received the flu vaccine to the total population is 4 to 10. So those who received the vaccine to the total is 4 to 10. All right. What percent of adults in the area received the flu vaccine? Okay, well, if we're going to work out for part A, we would do part out of the whole equals your percent out of 100. Again, because 100 is the whole percent, we're looking for the percent of adults who receive the vaccine. And then out of the entire population. So what percent received the vaccination out of the total percent of the population, which is 100. So I look on the other side and I say to myself, again, the part that received the vaccine is 4 out of the entire total population, 4 out of 10. 4 out of every 10 adults received the vaccination. How many out of every 100 adults received the vaccination? That's all that a percentage is. It's taking the ratio you're given. If 4 out of every 10 adults received the vaccination, how many out of every 100 adults would you expect to receive the vaccination? So then we look at our denominators. We say, oh, how do I get from 10 to 100? 10 times 10 is 100. Therefore, what am I going to do with the 4 to figure out my percentage? 4 times 10, you multiply the denominator and the numerator by the same value so that your ratios remain equal. So 4 times 10, it must be 40% receive the vaccination. 40% of that adult population receive the vaccination. Let's go on to the next part, part B. Part B says, if there are 284 adults who live in a local apartment, how many receive the flu vaccination? Okay, so this 284 are the total adults who live in that apartment, and we're looking for how many receive the flu vaccination. 2 ways to go about this problem. I'll use the percentage because that's what we found in part A, but I could just as easily go back to my original ratio of 4 to 10. But for part B, I'll just show you how we could use part A. So if now we know 40 out of every 100 adults receive the vaccination, we're wondering, so the top part is those that receive the vaccination. The bottom part is the total or the whole. And here, 40% is the amount that received the vaccination. 100% is the total percentage. Percentages are always out of 100. And so on this side then we're wondering how many received the vaccination out of our total that we're given, 284. So now we just create this equivalent ratio. 100 times what is 284? Well, if you take 284 and divide it by 100, I can put a decimal point right at the end of 284, drag that right up. How many times does 100 go into 284? Well, it goes in twice. 2 times 100 is 200. If you subtract off 284 minus 200 is 84. On the inside of the division box, we can add a 0 after that decimal point. You don't drag that decimal point down. Inside the division box, that decimal no longer worries us. As long as you've placed it here, you don't think about it again. So you drag down your 0 and you say, how many times does 100 go into 840? Oh, goes in 8 times. 8 times 100 is 800. Subtract off 840 minus 800 is 40. Again, on the inside of the division box, we add a 0 after that decimal point. It won't change the value of that 284. And we drag down that 0. How many times does 100 go into 400? It goes in 4 times. 4 times 100 is 400. Finally, we're at a remainder of 0. So that means I would multiply 100 by 2.84. And hopefully you've worked enough with when you're multiplying by 100, you just know that that decimal point would simply move over 2 places to the right and you get your 284. But if I'm multiplying the denominator by 2.84, I have to multiply the numerator by 2.84. So now I have to do 2.84 times 40. All right, well, 2.84 is about 3. 3 times 40 would be 120, so I know my answer better be somewhere around 120. Let's see what we get when we actually multiply. 0 times 4 is 0. 0 times 8 is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. Put down a 0 here because I have to move to my tens. 4 times 4 is 16. Put down a 6. Carry a 1. 4 times 8 is 32, and 1 is 33. Put down a 3. Carry a 3. 4 times 2 is 8, and 3 more is 11. 0, 6, 3, and then I've got my 11. Now I have to tell you, when we estimated and we said 40 times about 3 was 120, now I have this crazy number here. Well, the reason my number looks crazy and it doesn't look about 120 is because this decimal is 2 over. So in my final answer, the decimal point needs to be 2 over. So my answer is 113.6 people. So I have to tell you, just be careful. Make sure you estimate ahead of time. Know about what your answer should be, and that should take care of where you put the decimal point if you can't remember to move it over 2 places. So 113.6 people, well, that means about 113 or 114 people in that apartment building received the vaccine. All right, one more part to this problem. Now we're down to have the health officials also found. So first of all, let me just label that people. Okay. The health officials also found that 2 of 8 adults were overweight. If there are 280 adults at a local store, approximately how many are overweight? Okay. So again, we could look at part out of whole or total. Part out of total. 2 out of every 8 are overweight. If 2 out of every 8 are overweight, how many out of the total of 180 would be overweight? So again, we'd have to figure out how to get from 8 to 180. So I could do 180 divided by 8. And just so you know, this is actually how you're going to handle ratios in 7th grade. I'll do it with the upside down caret in a minute, but it's the same idea in 7th grade. We always just look at it as equivalent ratios, equivalent fractions. So 8 goes into 18 twice. 2 times 8 is 16. Subtract off. 8 goes into 20 twice. 2 times 8 is 16. Subtract off 4. Now we're like, oh goodness, we got to continue on. So that means we put a decimal at the end of 180. We immediately drag it up. Then on the inside of the box, what can I include after that 0? After that decimal point is 0. I drag that 0 down. 8 goes into 45 times. That means we're multiplying 8 by 22.5 in the denominator. So in the numerator, I'd also multiply by 22.5. So off to the side, I could do 22.5 times 2. I know my answer, 22 times 2 will get me to 44, so my answer is going to be somewhere around 44. Let's go ahead and multiply out. 2 times 5 is 10. Put down a 0, carry a 1. 2 times 2 is 4, and 1 more is 5. 2 times 2 is 4. When I estimated and I said 2 times 22, I got 44. But now I have this crazy number here. Well, that's because I have to remember to just move that decimal point over 1. So it must be 45 overweight people. I just want to quick show you letter C. using your upside down caret. So you would have overweight to the total adults equals overweight to the total adults. You know 2 out of every 8 are overweight. How many out of your total of 180 are overweight? And then you figure out 8 times 22.5 gets us to the 180. So then again, we just do the 2 times 22.5. So in 6th grade, this is probably how you set it up. By 7th grade, you're going to be looking at equivalent ratios using fractions. I hope that helps.